What's up, everybody? We're just gonna kill time here for a little bit until more people show up. Can I do this?
Yeah.
No, it says rotate. It says orientation is locked. Rotate device back. Okay.
What's it know about my orientation?
What's what does it know?
I don't know.
Probably more than I do. The computer knows all, everybody.
Except
So,
how to keep track of time.
except for how to keep track of time. Let's see if I. So, I'm gonna share this into our Discord, and while I do that, I just realized it's probably going to pause the stream, so we'll be right back. What's up? All right, so for those who don't know, this is Brian.
Hello.
And what we were going to do was sit here and do this over a computer, but I just got home. The computer's not set up yet, and we can't do it tomorrow or the day after tomorrow because
I'm a Luddite who wants to go camping. No. Yeah, I'm going camping and I won't have cell phone service for the next 5 days.
yeah, and so, good for him. I'm jealous a little bit. I'm also really happy to be home after tour. But this is our little shot, our little window to put something out there. And we don't get enough opportunities to do stuff together on this channel. But for those who don't know, this is Brian, and he was one of the co-instructors for the Idea of the University with Carl Jaspers. Now he's doing a solo course that starts in basically like
In a week and a half. We're starting on June 13th, Thursday. Wow, you're really zoomed in on me.
yeah.
Thursday, June 13th, 9 a.m. Mountain Time. That's 8 a.m. Pacific Time and 11 o'clock on the East Coast. It's a Thursday. So join us.
Yeah, and so
This is our last push to get people to sign up who want to. And then we're just going to do it. It's a small group. We want it to be pretty small anyway. So it'd be pretty intimate. I foresee being able to have a lot of really cool conversations with those who show up on top of the already planned lectures and stuff like that. So
turning off notifications on my phone because I was just getting messages and stuff. It's distracting me. So, yeah, we're going to talk about the course. We're going to talk about some of the reasons why we care about this course as well. And I think I'll, at some point, sort of interview Brian on a couple of things. People joining the live stream, you're all going to be able to ask questions as well. But basically, Ivan Illich. I want to talk about Ivan Illich. I want to ask Brian some questions about why Illich, how he fits into Brian's project. I'll talk about why he fits into my project, why I consider this canon at Theory Underground. But let's talk about the title for a moment. So, what was the title again? It's like techno, folks. If you're in the
of
chat,
this live stream,
yeah, in this live stream.
something to do with computer overlords, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I was like cyborgs, tech gods, total despair, and the human. That's what it is.
Cool.
And so let's break it down one thing at a time. The reason we're talking about cyborgs is because things are weird right now. Like people are officially using Neuralink. AI is doing crazy things.
War robots are being developed.
War robots. Yeah,
Probably way more than we know. But it
Way
definitely
more than we know.
definitely like it's known that that is a thing that's happening. And there's video like that circulates showing what's being developed. Sketchy, scary robots.
Ignorant man said, I'm so ignorant of this. Yes. John Doe says psycho-cybernetics. Exactly. Well, and psycho-cybernetics, I think, kind of gets to the heart of it. You know, we, but really humans more generally, are at a really weird point in history. And cybernetics is a really big part of that. The internet's a really big part of that. we are living in cyber history. What does that even mean? Like, it's all, these are really big questions. These are really big problems. And everybody in the world of theory is in a hurry to be post human or anti human or transhuman. But we're, Bryan and I, basically have the position that people don't even know or haven't really thought like what the human is in a sort of sense. I guess maybe I'll just ask you, Bryan. Do you agree with me when I say we have no idea what the human can be, but that doesn't, but that, but maybe like reading Illich, we kind of get an idea.
Yeah, I think we do get an idea from Illich. So what I was really thinking about was you said we're living in a weird time. Technology, cyber technology particularly is we're in a very like major transition stage and we don't even know exactly what it means. Nobody knows what it means. There's a lot of people with ideas and a lot of people way smarter than me um, who really understand how artificial intelligence works in the first place. I'm definitely not an expert on it. The more I learn, the more I feel completely baffled, but I want to understand. And the reason I think Illich is important for the human question and for just our moment in time is that he was, to me, when I read through his work in the books, especially that we're going to study in the course, he was really good at thinking and helping me to think through the transition from um, the late medieval world to modernity, what that looked like, why it happened, how it happened, what the forces at play were, all the way up into the Industrial Revolution. He's not the only thinker on this. It's definitely not uncontested material, but um, I think not only does he give some really good ideas for how to think toward a more stable future that allows people the freedom to learn the way they want to learn and exist with institutions that are convivial. That's the word he uses rather than manipulative. He helps to think through how we got here, which helps to also think how we can move next for me. If we can understand like the sort of the role technology and these various nebulous forces have played over the last few hundred years, then we can potentially think a little more deeply about where we're going, but also what the human piece is in that. And the other, like the human to the human question, thinking about like what is the human, what can the human be. I think a key ingredient for that is understanding what we have been, and that
Mm.
we've not been stable. We're not like what we are as a society or as individuals within a social context shifts based on what the social context looks like. What we think our possibilities are or could be are dependent on factors that just have to do with where and when we live. So basically, I guess the point I'm making is that by reading Illich, I have a deeper sense for what we can be simply because I can see that we've been dramatically different and we've had like a different horizon, different sets of horizons that we've found that like shaped us in the past. And so that's also true now.
Yeah, and so I like that, and I think that you and our conversations over the last few years, uh, not just about Illich, but schooling itself and the role that it plays in everything, has definitely had me thinking about institutions. And so when you doing your deeper work with Illich, were telling me that Illich is like the thinker of institutions as like rethinking tools
Mm-hmm.
and what the human can be. I started thinking. I took something that Mikey says, where he says like we don't even know what economies can do. I started thinking like I started applying that same sort of formula to
Mm-hmm.
institutions. Like we don't even know what institutions can do.
Mm-hmm.
Like I mean, institutions have done some amazing things. They've done some terrible things, um, but they seem necessary. outside of like reinventing the wheel with your friends, or with like random groups of people who like sitting around reinventing wheels together. Institutions are the only way to like reliably get any kinds of results from human populations, and so in some sense they're necessary, but like they have different capacities, and like you just touched on two of the major capacities: what to be manipulative
Mm-hmm.
or to be convivial.
Mm-hmm.
What does convivial mean?
Um, in short, that they support, inspire, and make possible everyday relations between individual people, um, at a really organic level. I think like a key convivial institution is one in which you choose to participate, and through that participation, you have like organic relations with other individuals with shared interests or shared desires or shared goals.
So like institutions made to do that,
Right. And a
made.
convivial tool is a tool that also promotes and supports the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. And it really, you can think of it as like he's putting it on a spectrum opposed to manipulation. So if manipulation is sort of the forced or enforced way that an institution might require certain behaviors, either through law or through just being the only option, convivial kind of works in the opposite way. He
Hmm.
recognizes in tools for conviviality that there's just no good English word for what he's trying to communicate, and so that will be a pretty significant portion of that discussion in the course, is trying to really nail down exactly what conviviality is, because it's kind of messy, even though it's kind of an everyday word.
So how does Illich factor into the grand scheme of your your fundamental concerns and approach
Mm.
to theory, philosophy, the life, the mind, like what you're doing, what and ultimately like the kinds of things that we've done
Yeah.
together.
I'm personally like the questions that make me most excited in philosophy or theory are questions about the human in general. Like, what is the human, and how, what does our like best life look like? What does a good life look like? Those, the questions constellating around those core questions
Mm-hmm.
are the ones that most fascinate me. Or, and so in the theory world, like, how could we reorganize things so that we live differently in a way that is more either enjoyable or beneficial, or questions like that.
Yeah.
And so, though, as my set of like core concerns, like when I'm thinking in the political and social sphere, those are questions that are kind of always on the forefront for me. Is like any political or social program that doesn't ask like, yeah, but what does that say for individual lives, for real people living within whatever this particular proposal is? Like, how do we go beyond being numbers, but actually live well? This is kind of born for me from basically like I think the love of Illich is, I really like to do a set of things that have no monetary value, and almost no social value in our world. I like to study. I like to read. I like poetry. Um, I like running and riding bikes and some other things too that are non-intellectual. But I like the intellectual life and waking up and reading and being part of a community of people who just really love learning about ourselves
Mm.
at a certain deep level. Uh, it's one of my favorite things to do. And so like my core, like the bigger project I'm working on right now, the Illich piece fits into as one of the many puzzle pieces on this long like multi-year journey, has been understanding like the, I guess the current terminology I'm using now is like, so there's a lot of context. You know what I mean? Like, okay, So
Are we talking about Garis now? Or
no, no, no.
oh,
We can get there. It's actually the other direction. So I'm a high school teacher, by day, Batman by night. Um, but so I teach in one of my units. We read Into the Wild.
okay.
Okay, so this was a book that I read when I was really young. I thought it was really cool when I was really young.
Is that the Alexander Supertramp one?
Bingo.
Okay.
Okay, so it's Alexander Supertramp. The guy goes out, wanders, North America for a few years and ends up in Alaska, and he dies in a bus. Um, but I liked it when I was younger, partially because I like the first important book I read was Thoreau's Walden.
Yeah.
When I started reading in high school, but I wasn't smart enough to read it, or like I wasn't a good enough reader to read it. I just kind of happened to find it, and it was really important to me, and I read it throughout college, and it was my favorite book for many years. Still might be.
Mm.
Anyway, so I teach Into the Wild because it's an accessible way to, like, Thoreau gets quoted pretty repeatedly. Chris McCandless, Alexander Supertramp, was a huge fan of Thoreau, inspired by Thoreau. And so it's a way to incorporate some of that into my class to talk about it and start conversations. But I got to thinking while I was doing this, like, what is the wild? Like, what's this wild he's going into? Like, what is that philosophically? What is the wild? Why do we call it the wild? And so the bigger project, and I think that's been like an ongoing concern of mine, is really like, what is the wild? And so this is a bigger thing I'm working on. And I really, what it comes down to is that I think that humans belong in the world. A basic Heideggerian point is that we're part of everything that is, and we tend to think of the wild as out there apart from us. And
Yeah.
anything we do and anything we touch doesn't get to be wild anymore,
Right.
right? Um,
And we don't get to be wild.
and we don't get to be wild, or to the extent that we are, um, we try to overcome.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think to a certain extent, this is kind of a direction that I've been thinking, as I do think that Illich is actually not intentionally, I don't think it's the terminology he was ever using, but that he was a thinker of the wild. He has this sense that there is um, a gratuitous love for existence, which is the way he kind of puts it in one of his interviews. Like,
Hmm.
at the core of the human experience is a gratuitous love for what is. Gratuitous meaning non-purposive. We just love thing. We love the world we're in at a certain core level, is like one of his basic convictions.
This is like when Levinas is like
Yeah.
Heidegger's Dasein doesn't eat soup.
Does he say that?
Yeah. I mean, he doesn't say it quite like that, but that he
I
does.
wish he said it exactly like that.
Yeah, he's just like
He doesn't eat minestrone.
Yeah, he doesn't. No, but he's basically saying like he doesn't enjoy soup. He doesn't enjoy sunshine on his face.
Levinas is also. You guys should take the Levinas course. Yeah, Levinas says, and I think this is an Illichian point, or if not, Illich is making a lot of Levinasian points. He did read Levinas. He mentions him at least once. That he says we take the walk for the walk, we dance to dance, or whatever. It is not. I can't remember the quote exactly. It's not the point of living, but this we read to satisfy our curiosity. We don't do it for some other thing, but because that is, like, we do it because that is living. That is living itself.
Yeah.
That was in his first book, and then I think that's just the bigger point of totality and infinity in general. And I think that's Illich's point too, is that
Well, I don't want. I'll contest that that's the bigger point, but that is a huge factor.
no, I think that's the point of the face of the other.
Oh God damn it!
I mean that. I really do. I think he's taking that particular thought and he's writing a book about it. We'll talk about it.
I think okay, well, because this is weeds, but like,
Yeah.
So basically, as far as I remember, there's several movements in totality.
There are
infinity.
several movements, yeah,
And-
including the interior to the exterior.
And the enjoyment of nourishment and of the sun on your face and the soup, and what he's saying is that he's arguing against the idea that desire is just desire of the other. Like
Mm-hmm.
he's going to argue that the most important kind of desire is desire for the other, but
Mm-hmm.
he is trying to point out that we really do get a lot just from doing our fucking basic shit. Like that philosophers have tended to underestimate the degree to which no, we actually
So
just
maybe.
we just do like the soup though. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's that's not because your mom liked this. No, you
Mm-hmm.
just like it.
Mm-hmm.
Like at a certain level. Like
Right.
you could always psychoanalyze anything, but also we just like to do things that we like to do, and that this isn't some big brain shit. But then he's gonna build out from there and tell. So why do we leave uh, our little walled in ego fortress? Why the point is that it's never enough, and that you do need the face of the other, like that the other does bring something extra. There is some surplus that is brought by the other, but now he's going to go, it's this metaphysical desire, it's this other thing, right?
Fair.
So I think, and then later he'll get into the child, and then
I was
everyone's,
thinking about natality. I mean, I can't not at this point,
yeah. and
being a
so
dad.
and so that's the thing, is like, okay, so one of the things we're dancing around, and we'll come right back to what you were just talking about, is just to say, and we'll come back to this. I'm going to bookmark this with everybody. It's just Illich and Levinas are two of the most important, underrated, underhyped, and neglected thinkers of the 20th century. And I think that will change in the next 20 years. But for the time being, most people aren't hip to what's going on with them. Cesar, who I think is probably still in the chat, said, "Howdy, Brian. Looking forward to the course in a couple weeks." So yeah, he signed up for the course. Really stoked to have Cesar on board for this, because I've just going off of my conversations with him and seeing the kinds of stuff that he's into. I think he's going to get a lot out of this course. But yeah, not a lot of people are privy to it, or why it matters. And when it comes to Illich, Nina Power and Justin Murphy are a couple of people who I've talked to who do like Illich. Now, I'm not sure that they like Illich for the reasons we like him, and I'd like to have conversations with them on this
Hmm.
channel in the next week and a half, if possible, as a way of kind of signal boosting the course. Now that I'm back from tour, I can do that kind of thing. But yeah, no, our specific approach to it is kind of what we're coming back to. Like,
Hmm.
where our interest has been alternative education and the failures of the current institutions, and whether the institutions can be reformed, and if so, how can they be reformed? And so Illich plays an important role here because he wrote the book. You should grab it, actually. Deschooling Society, which Brian will wave around on screen here. And I think he's famous for this book, but not his other books. Maybe the Convivial Tools book gets some attention
Yeah, this book,
sometimes.
Medical Nemesis, which we're not going to read,
Okay.
but we're going to read enough of his work. Like shadow work includes some essays that touch on the points in medical nemesis tools for conviviality too. So you'll get a sense of what's there for those who want to go read it. But it's a critique of hospitals.
Yeah.
But it's doing the same type of institutional critique, and it's out of my purview to critique the accuracy of some of his statements. So it's not worth
But the
a
basic
4-week
point, the
course.
basic point,
Yeah.
though, I think Nina actually said this, was that a tendency for institutions is to become something that serves the opposite of their original intention.
Yeah, it's called counterproductivity. I mean, that's like the concept he uses, that institutions become counterproductive. Hospital, like, or like the medical institution itself, is a good, or like an easy example, in that it exists for our health, but then we become incapable of making health decisions for ourselves, for even thinking about our own well-being, because only a doctor can tell us what's good for us,
Yeah.
right? Like, instead of just like playing around with what you're eating, or going to somebody in your circle of relations who might have had a similar experience, we just go, we have to hear it from a medical expert if it's true for our health,
So how does
right?
this same kind of argument about counterproductivity come into the schooling then?
Okay, so learning is a natural. I was actually So it's the desire to learn is a natural human characteristic
Yeah.
for Illich. And I was like searching, I was reading your book Time Energy, like reviewing it earlier today because I want to connect time energy. I think they're totally relate, like Illich is a way to just like deepen that conversation.
Mm.
Um, but what do you, it's like chapter one, italicized, you're talking about, um, oh shit, no, I don't remember. I should
He lost it.
have. I lost
Ah,
it.
fuck.
Point being, we learn to like to go back to that like Levinas quote, we learn to satisfy curiosity.
Okay.
It's a really natural thing that people do. Kids do it. Like if you've ever met a child and you have like a thing that they're interested in, you don't have to encourage interest. I was up in the mountains last weekend with my family and my nephews, and I have a bow and arrow. My nephew wanted to learn the bow and arrow, but he also wanted to learn to chop wood. I had limited time to do both. He's 12 years old, kind of getting to that age where he wants to like put some new skills under his belt. Put my son down for a nap, and I was like, "Which do you want to do?" He's like, "I want to learn how to use the hatchet and split kindling." And all I had to do was say a few things and like point out a couple things. Is like, I got it from here, and he was just ready to spend 2 hours doing that, if not the whole weekend, if somebody hadn't stopped him.
Mm.
And so that's a small example, but like a point I made to some students earlier this year is the most important educational experiences I've ever had in my life happened outside of school. The point of counterproductivity is when you force 100% of the young population under the age of 18 to show up to a classroom every day, you don't get learning, you get a set of rote behavior that has learned a skill. So you're and which in the long run undermines autonomous
Right.
learning for its own sake or for the love of learning, because you're kind of trained out of doing that.
Right.
Right. I had a student earlier this year. We were writing essays, and she was like, "Is it okay if I do this? All my teachers tell me I'm a bad writer because I don't do it their way."
Mm.
And I was like, "You know what? Work on it. Give me whatever you think is good, and we'll talk about it when you're done." It was the best essay I've gotten as a teacher.
For
I'm
real?
like, this is what your teachers like they've basically, because there's a model for how to write an essay that you're taught in schools. All of us who, like, maybe you were homeschooled if you're watching this, but if you went to school, you were taught the 5 paragraph essay. Like, I feel really confident saying that like 98% of all people who go through school learn the 5 paragraph essay.
Okay.
Okay, because it's a tool for getting students to produce work, but it doesn't guarantee thinking and it doesn't guarantee learning.
Mm-hmm.
But if you complete a 5 paragraph essay, you have learned the skill and you can be advanced to the next level. And then you get the degree, which tells you that you've learned something and that you've gone above the people who didn't get the degree. Or if you go on to college and use that 5 essay format and stretch it out into a bunch of 5 page, 10 page papers, but use the exact same format, you can get a college degree without thinking very hard.
Mm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, so it really becomes a matter of consuming and performing for certificates rather than loving to learn and learning for its own sake. Not to say that there aren't individual people who love learning, but the casualties are really high for those who just kind of get trapped in it and end up being forced to learn a bunch of subjects they're not actually that interested in the first place. And so that's the counterproductivity. We think that we're creating universal education, but what we're actually doing is creating universal achievement junkies or people who don't belong to that class and are trained to believe that they're inferior as a result.
Now I'm like trying to remember like what could I have said in the first chapter that relates to all that? Is it
Achievement junkies is in there, but that
so
here.
It's not achievement junkies, but it's probably structural stultification, right?
You're talking about structure of stultification, but you know when you're being called to remember something, it's never going to come in time.
That's okay.
It's okay.
So
We'll get to it in the course. That's maybe why you should sign up.
yeah. So the connection to time energies should be pretty obvious for anyone who read the book, but most people say they don't have the time energy to read the time energy book, and so that's okay. Um, I'll write another book about why you actually do later.
And schools, this is the additional point. Schools train you to never realize that you should have time energy when you don't. If you've had to go for 6 to 7 hours a day for your whole life, you don't get home from school with a bunch of energy. We drain you.
Right.
We drain kids of their energy.
Right.
And oftentimes, school I work at, homework's being phased out kind of across the board, and there are actually some clues that school is failing that it doesn't want to acknowledge, like at the larger institutional level, isn't acknowledging are really perilous for the institution. But homework's being phased out. Nonetheless, high school students I work with have to go to work usually after school. And so there's like, I'm like, are you guys, do any of you read at home? And they're like, when? I'm exhausted. Like I get home at 11 because I go like toss pizzas after I get out of here. When would I do that?
Yeah. And like I was just so over the weekend did this relay race, met a bunch of people who are super athletic, and I was definitely like the normie in the crew. Like this is not my world, and they were all talking about like rate my professor, and like finding the courses that like don't require much of anything, so that they don't have to do any reading or any real writing, and so then to the person who asked, "Why are you guys so cynical?" We like to teach and we care about the life of the mind.
Did we get that question on here?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm actually not that cynical.
No, I know. That's the funny part is that Brian's
I think the world is cynical.
Yeah.
And we just, like, I think we could rearrange it so that more of us could do the things we want to do more of the time.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty kind of optimistic.
I think that's a kind of optimistic.
To be real,
position.
like I understand, like critique always comes off as pessimistic.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, it always like feels pessimistic in the middle, but it's built on like a fundamental belief that no, it could be different. The world could be different, and I could like not just me, but all of us could kind of love our lives a little bit more.
Yeah, things can be
together.
better. That's actually an optimistic position. But my joke was gonna be that it's because we're teachers. Like that's the joke. It's like
it's because I'm Diogenes.
Yeah. So modern day school teachers are energy vampires. Neat. Maybe sort of. That's not exactly what we mean. The schooling system itself is what we're talking about, which is not the same thing as
awesome
this.
On the whole,
we're not talking about teachers.
I mean, not all of them.
Well, that's the thing, man. It's kind of depressing. Like,
okay, yeah, I'm cynical about the teaching profession.
Okay, everybody, let's get the deets.
I gotta be careful.
So, I know.
I'm cynical, and this just goes back to the larger sort of institutional critique of schools. Is that the school, like, regardless of which individual people occupy the school, its function is still the same. Because it is obligatory, because it has bell schedules, because it has a required curriculum, regardless of who is in the school, you kind of have no wiggle room. Like even myself, I'm not some hero teacher or something. I'm just a guy who shows up to work 5 days a week. That said, it's hard not to get cynical when most of the people around you at work really believe in it at a deep level, like we're changing the world and saving humanity. It's hard not to be cynical there, because it's like, on the whole, teachers tend to believe that what we're doing is awesome, and how dare we critique school. That makes one cynical, right? Because it's hard to even have this conversation.
No, sorry, I'm laughing because Dilbert Hernandez said, "Why does Nance look so different?"
Nance grew his hair back real quick.
Yeah,
too.
Have you seen Nance with a beard? This is exactly how he looks.
Does he?
No, kind of. Well, kind of.
Have I seen him with a beard? He has a beard now, but no hair.
No, he does not have.
And last time I did a course, I had no hair, or no hair and no beard. I guess I grew them both. I told my wife I'm becoming an animal.
She's like, I fucking know.
I was like, she's pregnant with our second kid, and we're not planning on having another one. So I said, I don't need to care anymore.
So wait, this is public information now?
She's 20. Yeah, she's 20 weeks pregnant. Yeah, we're having another baby.
All right, if I had the soundboard, I'd hit the little pew, 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 and the clapping, but, y'all just have to imagine it.
Yeah, we just, we got the second ultrasound last week. Or not the second, like the major full ultrasound last week.
So
Baby's
now,
totally alive and
so
healthy.
now he doesn't have to care. That's so funny.
Yeah, I'm off the market.
And
Off the reproduction market,
I have to care about Anne, what she thinks, though. She wants you to shave that shit off your face.
I know, that's a real problem.
Yeah, Anne's like, fucking...
Tara,
Anne was like, Brian and Nance cannot have facial hair. She was
Anne
like...
wants me to shave it too.
Anne said that Mikey's the only Theory Underground person who should have any facial hair.
She's probably right. I probably don't deserve a beard.
Yeah, you have not written enough books yet to have a beard.
I've written 0.
Yeah, this must be remedied.
I wrote a really long essay once.
How long?
I was a master's thesis. It's like 70, 80 pages.
Well, that's...
It's bound as
basically
a
a
book
book.
on my bookshelf.
Yeah.
It's not that good, though. It's not going to ever hit public.
No, it shouldn't, probably.
Thanks.
I'm joking.
No,
I'm
it's
joking.
not. I don't want it out there.
I asked everybody, did you smash the like button? 20 people voted. Only 8 people actually smashed the like button. You know what that means? 65% of you said, not yet, but I will. Well, 65% of you are liars. So...
Do they have to smash it?
You don't have to... You guys can, like...
gingerly...
You can all, like
not wreck their device when they...
delicately tap it. It doesn't really matter, but, All right, so... I think we should read a little bit from this book in a second. But first, we're going to say a couple other things. So, deschooling society is not the point of Ivan Illich. It's one of the important parts of his overarching work.
Yeah.
But it's not what we're going to stay on. So, with our course, The Idea of the University by Carl Jaspers, taught by Brian and myself and Anne, 3 people who love teaching, who love the university, who also have a huge problem with, a lot of the ways that things happen in those institutions. We wanted to get down to the idea. Like, what is the idea of the university as opposed to the reality? And the basic idea is a community of truth seekers trying to reach universal truth from their different respective fields. Okay, so that's the I'm giving you the cliff notes. Obviously, it's a lot more complicated than that. Jaspers goes pretty in depth. Well, that set the stage for our conversation that is now resuming with this course, which is Illich. But instead of just focusing on deschooling society, we're going to get into institutions more broadly. We're going to get into what the human has been, like what our capacities might be.
The history of language, writing, books, and texts.
Which is whole new ways of approaching these things, because people have been programmed in such a way that they, even if you think you know how to read, the chances are you don't know how to read. Chances are you
think there's only one correct way is already recognizing how ingrained we are in the book.
Book-brained.
Or in the text. What I would say about that topic, assuming a couple of you might have read the Theory Underground volume or some of the essays in there, a short piece that if you're interested in it, because you have read it, or if you did go and read it and got interested, I would say it might mean that this course will be fun for you, is Sam Longcar's The Mnemosyne essay.
Yeah,
I need to find out from him if he's read Illich or not. Like, just because he wrote that doesn't mean he has, but they're onto a lot of the same things.
Yeah.
And so one of the weeks will be dealing with a lot of the same themes, going all the way back to the Phaedrus. I think it's Phaedrus he was talking about there, right?
Yeah.
And Plato and the history of writing as opposed to like oral traditions, and how, as a technology, writing transforms memory. And then the book itself is a technology that shifts into new technologies as well. So he's always a thinker of technology, but he takes technology down to the level of writing itself, and he traces
Right.
it back. Okay, and so all the way back from the modern institutions to kind of their germ and their seed in writing. And so
Cool.
it's a fascinating journey.
It's gonna be pretty sick, guys.
Yeah.
Let's read a bit.
Yeah. So one of the things we're probably getting ready to kick off talking about is, and we had already mentioned a little bit earlier, is that we live in very weird times. There's a lot of speculation, but tremendous uncertainty about what AI means.
Oh yeah,
For
thank you
us?
for tying it back to the
Yeah.
actual title of this video. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What AI means, whether or not the end is imminent. It's easy to get pessimistic about life that way, thinking exclusively about our future, because things are weird. We're in an election cycle, and it's definitely kicking off to be a messy one. That's an understatement. It's already a shit show.
There's two very prominent wars on everybody's radar right now. There and there's no no nobody's doing anything to make it seem like anything is going to really get done about that. Like none of the resistance is going to do anything from what we can tell. And so it's just a fucked situation
And
that is like 2 steps away from, a real world war. So
how much do you talk about Garis and Artilect wars on your channel?
So like I haven't really talked about Garis at all.
'Cause
Like
you talk about him with
I don't
me
think.
quite a bit.
Yeah, so like I've talked to Bryan about Garis.
Okay.
Hubert Garis wrote The Artilect War, and the reason I like this book is because whenever I talked about how I think the next 500 to 1,000 years is basically, people who are going to try in some way to keep shit natural versus cyborg people, like people who embrace being cyborgs. Whenever I talk about that, people will be like, "Oh, you got to read Artilect War by Hubert Garis." And so finally I did listen to it when I was working at Amazon last year, and the dude was just thinking about that way before I was. And so and he's on the side of the what he calls the cosmists, which are kind of like the cyborgs in the way I think about it. Except that they are on a mission to create super gods that will that he thinks could definitely like destroy humanity, but he thinks that's one of the got to break some eggs to make an omelet. Like he's basically saying like, look, even if it's messy, even
For
if
the sake of universal cosmic exploration, like reaching the edges of the known universe.
he's kind of
It's
like
kinda
saying
like that.
because we can make something better than us, we have an
have to.
obligation to do it. Yeah, and yeah, so that's Garis, and that's pretty much the most I've said on this channel about it.
Okay, so I actually haven't read the book because it's extremely hard to find, and I did, in trying to find it, I did find that he's like a pretty like gnarly anti-Semite.
Oh
I don't
really?
know if you knew this.
I did not know
Like,
that.
there's a collection of his essays. It's like 800 pages long, and like a whole section of them is like he claims that he's not anti-Semitic, that he only hates certain Jews. But I'm like,
I mean, that's kind of fair though. I mean, I'm just
it's
kidding.
really
I'm kidding.
explicit.
Yeah.
But so I was listening to this podcast with him yesterday, and it was recorded like 10 years ago. It was 2014. And in the what was astounding to me was in the podcast, he said exactly where we'd be in the mid 2020s. Like
What's in the 2020s?
right now, like the over the last 2 years, the way GPT has emerged, he didn't like obviously know GPT was going to be the thing, but
Right.
he knew we would be in the moment where this was officially a political issue because it had taken like it had finally caught public's attention,
Yeah. Okay.
and like he's able to like say like timestamp all these various moves, including like the like he's mid 2020s.
He
He's
does make
very
it.
good at making predictions,
He
and so I think he's
yeah.
worth listening to,
Yeah.
just because he was one of the original AI researchers. He's not just some cuckoo like read some
No,
articles.
he
Like,
invented like
yeah,
self-adapting, like
yeah,
evolving brain shit. Like yeah.
yeah. He just apparently isn't on the side of the humans in the long run.
He you know, his heart goes out to us. You know, he kind of likes humans. He's like, I've got humans in my family. You know, he's like
Yeah, he does mention that. Like, we should think about this because my grandchildren will be alive when this really matters. Because really, he believes it's going to like come down to the biggest war that the world's ever seen that include billions of deaths. Because he's just looking like this is the way computer scientists and like physicists work. Is they just always are like looking at the way every war over the last 100 years has like grown in size and casualties by this much. So I'm just expecting it will be this large. So that's already like a messy way of analyzing things, but nonetheless, he thinks it'll be billions of humans by the end of this century have just been totally demolished.
Nick Land digs to Garis for
Yeah,
obvious
I think they
reasons.
both live in China right now too for obvious reasons.
So there's your answer to Jackie D was asking, is Hugo still in China?
Okay, this I listened to a podcast from 2014. He was there then. I don't know. Don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Anyway, so I figured I'd read from the second paragraph of the first chapter, where Illich kind of talks about some of the stakes of what he's doing here. Um, I will explain how this process of degradation is accelerated when non material needs are transformed into demands for commodities, non material needs like just being healthy, learning, the things we've already talked about. When health, education, personal mobility, welfare, or psychological healing are defined as the result of services or treatments. I do this because I believe that that most of the research now going on about the future tends to advocate further increases in the institutionalization of values, and that we must define conditions which would permit precisely the contrary to happen. We need research on the possible use of technology to create institutions which serve personal, creative, and autonomous interaction and the emergence of values which cannot be substantially controlled by technocrats. We need counterfoil research to current futurology.
Counterfoil. So repeat that.
We need counterfoil research to current futurology. Oh, I have notes elsewhere. I looked up this word counterfoil, and I actually think he's using it wrong. Um,
Oh. So
English not his first language,
so what do you think he's
but
trying to say though?
but I do what I think he's trying to say is we need research that pushes back to the current trends in future research that counters those, because the current models assume that the institutions we have are functional and optimal
Yeah.
and simply need to be
Refined.
refined. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a perfect word for it. Whereas he's saying no, the institutions are the problem because of the way they have a counterproductive effect on non-material needs, turning those into commodities. Does that make
Ah.
sense?
Yeah.
Basically, every non-material thing is turned into a thing to be consumed, or the language you use right here is turned into some sort of service or treatment. Education is no longer a thing you just go out and experience through the course of your life, or learning, just natural organic learning across one's life because that's what people do. It's a service you receive in the early stages of your life so that you don't have to later on.
Yeah.
So the institution itself, that's the value of the institution, is to provide the educational service.
Right.
And so if you don't think clearly, like, well, what are the ramifications of that? Well, they're a population that thinks it's educated because it has a really high achieving certificates and some really smart people.
Yeah.
Clearly, like there's no doubt about that. But
In certain ways, yeah.
it has this sort of self-selecting value and an inability or a blind spot to see total lack, right, in its own like abilities or its own ability to think creatively about itself, its future, its possibilities, or anything like that.
That's good. That's a good summary. Enjoyer says, just stumbled across this a minute ago, already intrigued. That's awesome. We won't be going that much longer. You can go back to the beginning and speed up to catch up. Maybe you'll catch up before we're done. Also, you can always come back to this later. There's no rush to finish it right now. Ignis Imber said, I'd like to hear a serious critique of Land's Nietzschean battalion support of post-humanism from Theory Underground, unless I'm already ignorant to an existing one. And I think that you said serious critique. The problem with the here's the thing. If we had a serious critique already, then it wouldn't be serious because it would be too fast. Like most people, that everything Theory Underground does is trying to resist the attention economy and its tendency to accelerate to the point where we're not really thinking, we're just reacting and operating as extensions of the industrial hot take making complex. And we're not trying to rush it. But yeah, this is where something in defense of the human is cooking. And what I would say is that I have not seen anything from CCRU that seriously engaged with Illich. I'll just turn the tables right around and say they're our seniors. They're old. They've been around for a long time. They never seriously engaged with any of the thinkers that we're putting forward as fundamental to understanding what the human is. And because they never did that, when they want to be all anti-human or post-human or transhuman, it's like, what are you even fucking talking about the human for when you haven't seriously engaged with any of the thinkers that do the human in the first place? Like you're in a big hurry to rush off in the direction of oh, we're so beyond that when you don't even know what that is. And I think that Samuel Longcar with the Becoming Human project, he's really good on this. He said as much when I had him on, and I was asking him about the human and how he thinks about it. And I think that ultimately the way I think about it, the way Bryan thinks about it, the way Samuel Longcar thinks about it, the way that Mikey thinks about it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, the way Nance thinks about it, we're all coming at this from different angles. We all have different favorite thinkers. There's overlap here and there. I work with everybody I overlap with. Bryan's someone I overlap with in specific ways. And Jaspers and Levinas and Illich are three of those big ways. And those are three of these amazing thinkers that do not get their due from the fucking hipsters in hyper liberal progressive academia that wants to be edgy and post-human. So that's on us to do. While nonetheless, if we're talking about serious critique, what is critique? Well, it's different than criticism, and real critique means thinking something inside out. Well, that's why you can't rush serious critique. To think the Bataillean Nietzschean position inside out means you become truly impacted by it because you're not just there to pick it apart. You're actually thinking it through. And in that sense, I am a Nietzschean. In that sense, I am a Bataillean because insofar as I have thought through them, I fucking love them. I genuinely do. And I don't think pointing out that they're problematic is enough to make them any less impactful. And the way that Land uses them is in some ways fucking awesome, and then in other ways kind of cringe. But for me to actually unpack that, this is not the place, or whatever. But it is part of the project here, and yeah, there's going to be a lot of different versions of that argument. But the main place that you'll find anything is that Ryan? Ryan just, I think he wants out.
Oh, is he here?
Yeah, Ryan's here.
Oh.
My cat is Ryan, by the way, everybody. He wants outside. That's why he's meowing. Anyway, what was I just saying? Oh, Human Futures, the anthology at Theory Underground. We are now calling for proposals for the Human Futures volume. This will be the first major stab in that direction. So if you're interested in these questions, you stay tuned. There's going to be some great writing on it. And if you are already doing a lot of writing in this area, in these areas, go ahead and submit something. Go to theoryunderground.com. The TUCon 2024 proposal form became available today, and it will be open until the end of June 16th. And so that's like the window of time. And after that, you shit out of luck. And so the Human Futures volume is going to be incredible. There's not a lot of room in it. There's several other awesome volumes in the works, and you can take a look at all of those over there at the website. Uh, but also, if you want to develop your writing, if you want to work on something that could get into a volume someday, if you are an autodidact or if you went to the university, in either case, if you're trying to refine your thinking and approach the life of the mind in this way that's not just academic and not just popular, but is trying to do something different, then we have the Theory Writing 101 course starting this Saturday. And there's not a lot of signups. It's going to be a small, intimate little workshop. The workshop is for people who are tier 2 or higher in that. And it's going to be a 2 month crash course in refining tools that you might already have, tools that you might already use, but the whole point is refining them. Like things that you didn't even know that you do, and you could do better. And we'll get better by talking about it, by writing, by dissecting stuff that other people have written. It's going to be amazing. We're doing that with Andy Ridgway. He's got a doctorate in composition, rhetoric, etc. And he's also like done a bunch of work with Todd McGowan, so he's super based. But that's going to be happening at the same time as this Intro to Illich course, which starts
June 13th.
June 13th, baby. And I put a Substack post out about how if you want to do the Intro to Illich course during June and the McGowan's course on Lacan Seminar 11 during July and the Theory Writing 101 course during both June and July, um, I can put together a special package deal for you. So get at me about that. You just got to DM me ASAP because this stuff's coming up really quickly.
Yeah, one thing I'll add to like.
Here, you take that. I'm going to go
Okay.
let Ryan out and I'm listening.
Okay. Just the idea that we need a serious critique. It's like that's why I pitched the course to Dave to do Illich in the first place. I agree. Not to say that the Illich course is a serious critique of land. It's not. I probably won't be talking about land, but I think Illich is one of the pieces necessary, or at least seemingly necessary for that critique or for starting that critique. And it's not something I can do alone. It's not something Dave can do alone. It's not something anybody can do alone. To me, at least, the idea of even having courses is so that we can get brains together, get people thinking together, thinking divergently. My mind is naturally, I have what I have read, I have what I know, and I'm going to think along those lines. But we humans notoriously don't know what we don't know. Yeah. And so when we get together to learn together, we can actually expand those knowing horizons, basically. Which is why I took the land course. I don't know land deeply, but like you said, any really, really high quality critique of anybody requires you read everything they wrote.
Yeah. Which
fun. I can't do today.
No, it's
I can't do and now the base. I don't know. Yeah, we need to put our heads together. That's the whole point of doing anything like this. Because if it wasn't about multiple people
putting our heads together here, yeah,
I think like if it was just a matter of like Dave and I are going to figure this out, we just would.
Yeah, we'd do it,
and we would not like invite other people to do it with us.
Yeah,
like that seems kind of obvious to me. But so to whoever said that, join us.
How do I get more drip? I don't know what you mean. What is the quick and dirty rundown of the essence of Bataille thought? Sun make energy extra. People get extra energy, don't know what to do with it. Destroy it together, it makes bond. If they don't, it makes fuck. Bad thing. There you go. That's caveman speak for Bataille.
Huh.
it's about, I mean, it's about surplus and about surplus being like at every level of existence. And humans have historically had to try to figure out what to do with that. And that's why ritual and festivals and sacrifice all just, it's like this universal human experience. And that there's something special or unique about the way capitalism does it, that is not very human, and doesn't really let us come together in how we destroy things. But we still destroy things nonetheless. Um, I don't know. That's not fair to Bataille, but but you asked for quick and dirty, and so you're not going to get fair. There you go. Um, but they just check out the Accursed Chair. It's actually like it's a great read, and also Land wrote a fucking crazy good book uh, about Bataille called The Thirst for Annihilation. And when I say it's crazy good, I mean it's not just crazy good because he's being edgy throughout that book. It's crazy good because he's a fucking Kantian, like a crazy good Kantian, like a Deleuzo Kantian. And at the time that he was writing that, he was top of his game in terms of being a real scholar when it comes to that kind of stuff. And I don't know that I would have known that if it wasn't for Mikey,
Mm-hmm.
just going so deep into all of this stuff. But yeah, checking it out on my own, it is impressive. And the Intro to Land course has been very popular at Theory Underground. But that's the thing, is like Land is popular, Zizek is popular. Uh, Nobody knows who Illich is. Nobody, nobody knows who Levinas is. And if they know who Levinas is, it's probably because they're a Derridian and they're like, yeah, Derrida's ethics is basically Levinasian. And it's like, yeah, but you don't know what that means unless you've really tarried with Levinas. And they don't. And so, yeah, this is the year of Illich and Levinas at Theory Underground, which is very exciting. Last year we had Jaspers, also someone who doesn't get a lot of love. And eventually we'll also have a rent. And a rent and Levinas are both really good for thinking about natality, which is like newness coming into existence and like what that means. But Illich is fucking foundational for thinking about what humans can be, what institutions are, and the ways that ours, because they are all profit driven, are fucked, but also like ways that they could be better. Ooh, um, that's where he's coming from. That's what he's doing, and yeah. Do you have another thing you want to read from it?
I was trying to find it, but I don't know if I want to find it while I'm looking.
I mean, that'd be
Um,
dope if you wanted to read
yeah,
something else from it. You should just go through it and read everything. Could we just read the whole thing tonight?
yeah, let's do it. Uh, uh, the bigger point I was gonna make, and I'm trying to find the quote, but this will definitely come up in the course the first week. If you like Theory Underground as a model, and you want to think more about what Theory Underground is doing and how there could be more um, places on the internet like Theory Underground that aren't Theory Underground. Basically, if you like Theory Underground as a model, it basically fits Illich's proposal for how we could deschool society without sacrificing high quality learning. Because that, I mean, that is the crutch. Anytime I talk to anybody who cares about schooling or defends schooling, like, yeah, but how will people learn to read? I mean, that's the first critique. It's a genuine, legit one. How will people learn X, Y, and Z thing, whatever thing matters to that individual? And deschooling is not about just like accepting a society of uneducated people, but reimagining the structures which make education possible and, in fact, more common. But now I cannot find. I mean, I thought I marked it. I thought I swear I wrote just.
Hypermodern keeps asking, is there any aspects of right wing intellectual thought worth engaging with or reading right wing intellectuals with a left wing gaze? My position is that you need to read thinkers on their own terms,
Yeah, what do you mean by right wing?
not with a left wing gaze. Like,
I'd say Illich is fairly conservative.
really?
Yeah.
Is that because he wants to conserve the human?
Yeah. And he's religious, and like if you know to look for it, you can see his religious convictions undermining or underpinning a lot of what he's saying. Um, he ultimately comes to be against thinking economically altogether, although he uses some sort of Marxist language in his earlier works. He eventually comes to see that that was maybe fruitless. Um, yeah, but again, you can't just pin him down as one single. What he actually does is he tries to redefine what left and right should mean in the first place. That those are
If
old categories altogether. But there's, if we think of conservative as somebody who wants a society that's stable as opposed to built on endless progress towards something quote better, he absolutely is on the stable side,
yeah,
and
yeah,
that's a
yeah,
conservative position.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Not conservative in our current political milieu.
Yeah, but he's also
Um,
like this.
he's not
This
right wing
he was
by
also
any
this
stretch of the
radical.
imagination.
He was also like
Um,
a radical. So like, he got in trouble with the Catholic Church because he was like teaching missionaries not to like be missionaries, basically
yeah,
in South America.
right. American missionaries.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, specifically American missionaries, because what he saw was that American missionaries bring their culture, not religion.
Yeah.
So it's still a religious reason for that. So there's a conservative piece there, but it was also because he saw, oh, all they're just bringing is consumer culture to Latin America through the church,
And what he did,
and that was his.
what he did in Latin America was he not only was he like sort of teaching these missionaries to stop being American assholes who were colonizing like South America. No, he also was doing like all of these experiments in education that we find super interesting because he sees problems with the institutions, and so he was trying to do differently. And Paulo Freire's work comes out of engaging with what Illich was doing there. And for those who don't know, Paulo Freire is the author of Pedagogy of the Oppressed. He's like the most famous critical pedagogy person. So he outshines Illich, but like Illich is sort of like this source of inspiration. Um,
And
well,
even
he's also
he's got a limited influence.
he's a, but I was gonna say
Yeah.
Gores too, Andre
Uh-huh.
Gores. Like we love Gores. Nance and I read the entirety of Farewell to the Working Class, or is it Farewell to the Proletariat? It's Working
Working
Class.
class.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We reread the entirety of that, and then had like a disagreement stream with Daniel Tutt about it, and it's because we basically are on board with a lot of what Andre Gores is doing. He's another one of these overlooked and super neglected thinkers. But yeah, no, his some of his most important distinctions and ones that I use all the time in a lot of the stuff that I'm doing on here come from Illich. Come from a serious engagement with Illich. So you find it? He's looking. Okay, but also I would.
Yeah, I don't know that this is gonna happen. I'm
While
sorry.
you look, I'm going to say a couple of things though in answers to that question. So, what do you mean by right wing? What do you mean by left wing? That's kind of what we already said. But like,
Mm-hmm.
no, look, I'm going to assume the most basic American sense to these terms, and then I'll say, yeah, there is a sense to looking at all sides of arguments,
Mm-hmm.
and someone like I'll use Heidegger as someone who is obviously conservative, or Nietzsche. Okay, in both cases, and Nietzsche's more of a libertine and less of a conservative, but he's got his conservative streak. Definitely an anti-progressive. Well, they are absolutely essential for thinking about what it is to be a human. They are absolutely essential for thinking about what it is to be in the world. They're absolutely essential for making sense of philosophy because everyone else that you could possibly read is in some way engaging with them, whether they like them or not. If they don't like them, then they're especially shaped by their thought because they're profound thinkers. And part of what makes them so profound is that they don't hold to most of the liberal progressive commitments, assumptions, presuppositional frameworks of your standard liberal subject. And so, yeah, if you want to try to get radical outside perspectives on things, you gotta like get inside the head of or walk 1,000 miles in the shoes of great thinkers who see things differently, and that you can't. That's like I think people get this idea that means like, yeah, so I should watch Ben Shapiro too. It's just like, no, like not shit weasels. Like that doesn't mean like watch. Oh, I watch dumb left media, so now I'm gonna watch dumb right media too, and then I'll have both sides. No, that's idiot centrism. But what we're talking about is like real thinking, and in that case, then you want to read like real thinkers, and real thinkers are rarely so easily reducible to left or right in any strict sense. So there you go.
Dude, I'm failing.
Yeah.
I have it marked in my notebook what page it's on, but I don't have that notebook with me.
What is the page you're looking for? I mean,
Yeah,
no,
it
like
basically just was. It was like a really cool summary of one of the ways that learning webs would work and function as like just a series of various institutions and just individuals coming together to learn based on
Yeah.
their own desires, but succinct for what one of these institutions, right? Because he's breaking down to like a lot of learning just people will go find on their own. They'll just need to find a peer to learn with, read with, kind of the way we will often just like, hey, I want to read this book. Do you want to read that with me? Super easy. Anybody can do it. You don't need anybody to help you do that,
Yeah.
except maybe the internet, right?
Right.
But also, sometimes you need people that teach you things that are more challenging or difficult, and what an institution that might do that could look like. He succinctly describes in like a paragraph, and I just can't find that paragraph.
It's in this. I think it's in chapter 6,
It's in 6. That I would just like.
which is called Learning Webs, and it's basically about what he's talking about. But all of that was stemming from you had been saying to me or to everybody else. No, yeah, you were saying to the audience that if people want to, well, if you find any inspiration from Theory Underground, and you might want to someday do your own thing with like a learning community, then you'll probably want to fucking check this out. And this
or
is
even if you don't want to create your own thing, if you like what Theory Underground's doing, it's good to think about why, because it is different. And we should, even if I don't want to do it on my own, I should want to know what it looks like when I encounter people who do. Does that make sense? Because a world with more Theory Undergrounds in it is a world I want to live in. Which, because Theory Underground is limited to a certain mission, which has to do with theory, right?
right.
You're not going
right,
to come to Theory Underground
for
to
biology.
read biology or even that much literature.
No.
Maybe if it is going to inform some theory, I can see certain books being relevant, certain novels or pieces of literature. But I can also see a Theory Underground like, I'm sure it might already exist that I don't even know about, but where you read 19th century literature,
Yeah.
right? And I would love to go take classes there because I like 19th century literature.
Yeah.
But I know I'm not going to do that at Theory Underground, and Theory Underground shouldn't have to do that either.
No.
The whole idea is that we should stop expecting institutions to do everything for us.
Yeah.
Right? They can just be specialized in the thing that the people who are committed to them know best, and shouldn't have to know everything because we can't.
Yeah, and I guess I think there's probably enough people who popped in on this stream who've never engaged with Theory Underground before. It's not a YouTube channel. It's not a podcast. It's on YouTube and podcasts, but Theory Underground is its own thing. And insofar as it's on YouTube or podcast, that's just because that's the marketing arms of what Theory Underground is doing. And the real thing that it's doing is the courses and the publishing, right? It's a lecture course site. We are big defenders of lecture courses, of introductory courses, but also of super deep and rigorous kinds of courses. At least that's the goal, and we constantly fail in trying to achieve it, but that's the goal. Yeah, and so right here on page 76 of Deschooling Society, He says schools are designed on the assumption that there is a secret to everything in life, that the quality of life depends on knowing that secret, that secrets can be known only in orderly successions, and that only teachers can properly reveal these secrets. An individual with a schooled mind conceives of the world as a pyramid of classified packages accessible only to those who carry the proper tags. New educational institutions would break apart this pyramid. Their purpose must be to facilitate access for the learner, to allow him to look into the windows of the control room or the parliament if he cannot get in by the door. Moreover, such new institutions should be channels to which the learner would have access without credentials or pedigree, public spaces in which peers and elders outside his immediate horizon would become available. Right? Theory Underground is making
That's
that
actually what I was.
available. I know,
Why'd you do that?
I know, I literally found the part he's looking for. No, but it gets this
Yeah.
next paragraph is the part that I figured I should read that before the paragraph here. Actually, no, read that paragraph,
Down here.
this one, because that's the next one. Yeah.
I believe that no more than 4, possibly even 3, distinct channels or learning exchanges could contain all the resources needed for real learning. The child grows up in a world of things surrounded by people who serve as models for skills and values. He finds peers who challenge him to argue, to compete, to cooperate, and to understand. And if the child is lucky, he's exposed to confrontation or criticism by an experienced elder who really cares. Things, models, peers, and elders are 4 resources, each of which requires a different type of arrangement to ensure that everybody has ample access to it.
Things, models, peers, elders is a nice way of breaking down tutelage as one of the 3 T's: time, energy, talent, and tutelage, or the 3, like each one is useless without the others. And tutelage just means mentors, teachers, but like
Elders.
when so he's saying
That's
elders.
the elders bit.
It's the elders bit, and I mean I would
But for certain types of learning, you need certain access to certain things to make that learning happen. Fortunately for us, the kind of learning we most like to do only requires books, but other things require more complicated learning, like microscopes and
labs,
labs and or chessboards, or it could be any number of things. Tools for an engine, whatever. Models. These are just basically things to see how to do the thing, peers to do it with, or learn alongside, and elders, who are people who are not necessarily certified to do something, which may or may not qualify them to teach you, but somebody who has proven through their own life that they're the most qualified, which is kind of a break from our norm.
and so
Which is that an elder should just be, in our world, should have a PhD. But that's like a requirement.
Right.
Where he's saying like, yeah, maybe, but I can think of an arrangement where the elder doesn't have to have a PhD, right? But would still be completely able to take you along the path they went on and teach you what they know, so that you can learn for yourself.
Thomas says that school brainwashed him to the point that he genuinely believed that self-teaching was impossible.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, your experience then, what is unique about your experience that sets you up as a, I don't like this word elder, man, but you are an elder to a lot of people on the internet. But like, what it's I as a teacher, as a mentor, as I don't, maybe an expert, but you think a lot about this. But outside of the fact that you think a lot about this, like, why should someone be excited to do Illich with you?
I have a cool mixed perspective. If we're talking only the schooling angle, in that I somehow am a high school dropout who currently teaches in a school and have an insider view, but recognize that the best learning I've ever done was not in schools, and so I feel like my lived experience is a complicated. Every day, like, is complicated, and Illich helps me understand the complication.
Yeah.
Right. And so, as someone living in that, and I also have a master's degree in education, which doesn't qualify me to teach Illich at all. I'll say, like, in in a direct sense, other than the fact that my research, I did an independent study, so that Illich was one of the major interlocutors of my thesis. But I have a pretty deep, rich understanding of the way that the institutional system works, and institutional research reinforces and reifies basically the whole structure.
Mm.
Um, I was at a conference last week that was almost entirely just frustrating, and we'll get into some of those reasons why, but it really just mimicked what any education class tends to look at and focus on to distract from a lot of the other stuff. On top of that, I've been reading Illich for 6 years beyond just the schooling critique. The first book I read of Illich's was actually In the Vineyard of the Text, which is his last book, which is a deep dive into the transition from late medieval and early scholasticism into full-on modernity, and the transition in how we read books. The physical use of technology shifted dramatically, and that was my first reading of Illich, and I think that book is super important for anybody who, like us, is a reader of books, what he calls bookish, right? We're very bookish. I've got a library full of books, and I love them, and I've read them. I treat them like friends. But he also provides a sort of self-critique, because Illich himself was bookish, known to read multiple books in a day, constantly had his nose in a book. But what he saw in Hugh of St. Victor, a 12th century pedagogue and theologian, and amongst other things, was somebody who read completely differently from the way we read, which restructures the way he experienced the book in front of him and the world around him. And so basically another attempt to show how our relationship to technology affects our relationship to the whole world. And so the technological situation we find ourselves in, an important question today, again, because we're in a brand new technological situation that no one knows what to do about. Any technological situation is shaping to what we consider possible, doable, and things like that. And so how we relate to it, choose to relate to it, and what we ultimately think is worth doing about it are big questions. And we should kind of know history is the bigger point. And he helps us do that in this one little area.
And the way that we do exegetical readings is partially based on.
There's a connection there. Yeah.
Yeah, partially based on stuff we've learned about what reading is or can be. So,
the way he approaches reading in that book, I started a podcast just to practice it, and it is kind of different. It's really cool. So we'll talk about that, language, written language, and all of that going back. So, sorry, that wasn't a complete thought.
It's good, dude. It's good. It's good. And I will be there through the whole thing. My job is to, how did you describe it?
What did I say? I know what you're talking about.
Like riff or context or.
Yeah. So there have been a lot of courses at Theory Underground dealing with topics that are adjacent to things Illich talks about. The PMC course. There's the other one. Land to a certain extent.
Critical media theory.
Media theory. And all of them, Dave basically has an open invite to rant whenever he needs to about how things connect.
Yeah, a big way that it does is like a 21st century Marxian project would be post-Marxist in a lot of ways and anti-Marxist in some specific ways. I genuinely believe that, and that's because you would have to tarry with certain things that happened in the 20th century that are fundamental changes in the material conditions, fundamental changes in the reproduction of class society, fundamental changes in media itself, which is to say the ways that our fucking sensory apparatuses take in the world and interpret things, perceive things. As McLuhan says, it inverts base and superstructure. But it goes way beyond that. I mean, we can get into the post-class fractured mass through Baudrillard, and we do in critical media theory. But also there's like the PMC and discursive Taylorism, and what comes out of the wins of the society we live in as it defeated the old societies. And so, because it won. And what does it mean to sit with the fact that it won? And what does it mean to reconcile yourself to that situation in a way that gives you some kind of advantage so that you can move forward and do something different that would actually have a real impact? And part of it means that you just have to really commit to thinking through these things that I just touched on, as well as a bunch of others. I'll be bringing that stuff in from time to time into dialogue with what Bryan's going to be doing with Illich. But at this point, I think we got to close this thing out. So thank you, everybody, for watching this. Hyper Modern was saying that there's a bunch of elders around where he said Aboriginal elders, but also a bunch of them are simply power hungry narcissists. Yeah, well, most elders are just old people, right? That's the thing, is like not every old person is an elder, but every old person wants to act like they're an elder. And it's actually like kind of sad and it's complicated. Why are they that way? Well, they're products of a broken system. And your solution, and you said mushrooms over elders' teachings. I would say both suck. Both are unreliable, and real thinking and experience and interpretation and lasting change can't rely on either one really. Both might play their part. Both might. I'm giving you that much. Both might play their part, but you can get a superficial like, oh wow, that's deep off of either one. It's nothing compared to what you would get out of a course like this. That's
Here,
why.
let me read
That's
this.
why I do this.
Yeah, that's a real. Yeah, there are people who I've been in these positions where you look up to somebody, you go to them for genuine direction, and they're uh, totally corrupt in some way or another. Illich writes, charlatans, demagogues, proselytizers, corrupt masters, and
Sorry,
simoniacal
start over and go slower.
charlatans, demagogues, proselytizers, corrupt masters, and simoniacal priests, tricksters, miracle workers, and messiahs have proven capable of assuming leadership's roles and thus show the dangers of any dependence of a disciple on the master. Different societies have taken different measures to defend themselves against these counterfeit teachers. Indians relied on caste lineage, Eastern Jews on the spiritual discipleship of rabbis, high periods of Christianity on an exemplary life of monastic virtue, other periods on hierarchical orders. Our society relies on certification by schools. It is doubtful that this procedure provides better screening, but if it should be claimed that it does, then the counterclaim can be made that it does so at the cost of making personal discipleship almost vanish. Bigger point being, like, that is one of the risks, that there are going to be people like who are going to take advantage of a system in which one relies on master just finding people to teach them. Like, maybe we should get rid of the word master in general, because what is mastery in the first place? But finding people to teach them, first, it's a risk we're taking, and two, that like, that's not the only thing he's proposing. Really, he's downplaying that part of the whole situation, saying like having one person you go to who is your master and takes you through all of the learning experiences in life is the dangerous option, and maybe that's your first red flag. You can go to, quote, the word he uses, elders, for different experiences. Someone who is an elder in their field, meaning someone, I would put Todd McGowan there,
Yeah.
right? Not because he has a PhD. I don't care that he has a PhD. Or Mikey, actually, that's a better example.
Yeah.
Mikey's an elder in the subfield that he does in philosophy and theory.
Right. I like mentor.
For life advice. Yeah,
I like
exactly.
mentor more than elder.
Yeah,
As a word.
yeah. He's, I think, because he's embedded in the church, and that's a word you're going to use in the church. It's a choice he probably didn't even think too much about. Yeah, there's a lot of things in Illich where I might reframe the way it's stated.
Right.
And this is one of
As
those.
Andre Gors does.
Yeah, totally. And it's 50. He wrote this 50 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, it's not to think of it as set in stone that he just figured the world out, because he didn't.
No.
That's not why we're here. We want to engage with it critically and think about what we can use now. And so if that means getting rid of the word elders and thinking about mentors, people teaching who are advanced in a certain subject and know more than me, a lot of people in this world, I should want to seek them out. But part of what he's talking about too is just seeking out people to do things with, and sometimes that's all you need. Sometimes you don't even need the quote elder. Sometimes a few books and a friend are what you need too. It really depends, right?
Yeah. Really depends on what you're doing.
And we can avoid charlatans just by not thinking we need to rely on one person for everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't go to the person who says that they got it all figured out. That's for sure.
I got it all figured out.
Tom Diaz said, I don't think you teach real thinking. It does not. It does need to come from something within the student. Mentors, books, and courses are more catalysts to guide it and sharpen it. I agree, but one caveat, going back to Levinas, I really love how he says that does he use the word learning? He says it's not maieutic. And I had to look that word up, but basically it just means like it's like Socrates thinking that oh you've got everything inside of you. The real role of the teacher is just to take what's inside of you and develop it. But what Levinas is saying is like no, the other can bring genuine newness. Like you actually lack something that the other does have in some situations. I think maybe he takes it too far. But we're going to close this out. Thank you, everybody, so much. I'll drop a link in the description and pin it in the top comment. Hope to see you all in this course and or the Theory Writing Course 101. That's going to be awesome. This is going to be awesome. It's going to be a great summer. I'm freaking stoked.
Yeah. Sweet. Thanks, everyone. See you soon.
Peace. How do I close this thing out? Bye.
Bye.